Hi there, I'm Luca DiPietro,
And I'm Hanna Jones.
and this is your Thundercast. On episode 2 of the Thundercast, we'll be hearing from BT alumni Aaron Parry to learn a bit about him, but also to learn about Black History Month and its significance to the global community. Then, we'll shift focus to Valentine's Day and discuss some COVID-free date ideas for you and your Valentine, and name some of our favorite Valentine's Day movies. Today's guest on the Thundercast is Aaron Parry. It's great to have you today, Aaron. Thank you for coming.
Glad to be here.
So we're just going to be asking a few questions about yourself, your connection to BT, and Black History Month. Hanna and I will alternate. So our first question for you is, could you tell us a bit about your connection to BT, your time on student council, and what you're up to now?
Yeah, so I went to Blessed Trinity for all 4 years of high school for me. And when I was in grade 12, I was appointed to be the first First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Equity, and those who don't have a voice for themselves representative on student council. So I think that was the first year that we were doing it. And that was essentially how I got into council. It was a really great experience. I actually got to connect with other students. I wasn't really used to doing a lot of kind of community work or school-wide work. Up until that point, I was pretty shy and I was just kind of keeping my head down, just doing homework and stuff. So that actually allowed me to actually get out of my comfort zone and actually try and be more confident as a person. And yeah, it was a great experience. I loved connecting with other students. I think it was great because it actually allowed me to do Black History Month programming and to help out with different programming that was to promote Indigenous students and whatever programs that we had going on at the board around BT. And I think that it was definitely what kind of got me into the mindset of wanting to do community work and wanting to do work that's actually focused on social issues and BIPOC peoples. And yeah, I think that that's pretty much what council was like. And sorry, what was the last part of the question?
It was just what you're up to now, school and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry. So I'm at McMaster right now. I'm in my 4th year, 2nd semester, so planning on graduating soon. I'm in Indigenous Studies and Anthropology, and I also have a minor in African and African Diaspora Studies. So that's pretty much my education. Currently, we are in pandemic online school, which essentially means that you wake up and you turn on Zoom every single day, and it's like that the entire year, and you never see people in person, which is pretty monotonous, but you get pretty used to it. But aside from school, I've been doing various community work inside and outside of McMaster. So I was involved in choosing a new space for the Black Student Services that is going to be implemented at MAC in the next coming years. I'm on the Black Students Association, and I've also been helping with organizing the Black History programming at McMaster for this year. And yeah, it's essentially what I've been up to currently.
Thank you so much. You seem like you're really enjoying the Zoom university, and it's definitely taking a toll on all of us. But now I'll hand it off to our current First Nations, Métis, and Inuit / Equity representative, Hanna Jones, for your next question.
We know Black History Month, it means something different to everyone and a lot of people, but we want to know what it specifically means to you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Black History Month for me at this point in my life is very focused on honoring our ancestors and honoring my community in any way that is, because obviously they're pretty much our history and we are their future. And whether that comes with the pain that comes with Black history a lot of the time, or the contributions that Black people have had to our communities, I think that's always what's been important to me, because I think that when I was growing up, or when I was your guys' age, I lived in atmospheres that were predominantly white or weren't super focused on Black history. So I think that I always saw it as sort of an escape from kind of the routine history that we were learning, kind of the routine, just current issues we were focused on. And it actually allowed me to develop that connection to my community and to actually remind myself about my identity and remind myself about my roots and the importance that our ancestors have to us, because a lot of who we are today and the work that we're doing is influenced by the work of those that have come before us, and a lot of our ways of thinking and our practices and our culture and our pride comes from our ancestors. So I think that it's always been important for me to use Black History Month to remind myself of that and to allow that to inspire me to do more work. And I think that it's becoming even more now, because we all like to say that it's Black History Month, but we all know that Black history should be all year round, and know that it's so much more than just a month, and the shortest and coldest month at that. And yeah, I think that it's a great reminder of who we are as people and who we've been and who we're going to be. And I think that yeah, it's definitely a lot about thinking about my ancestors and where I can go in the future and how I can act as an ancestor to my future descendants.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that little thing. I do agree. It should be something that, though it's highlighted during the month of February, it should be something that we're highlighting every other month of the year as well. So.
Definitely, definitely.
So our next question is, which Black political, cultural, or social figures have been your greatest inspiration, and which ones do you think students should be taught about today?
I think personally mine, growing up as a Black man and trying to figure a lot of that out in terms of identity, in terms of community work, my inspiration has always been Malcolm X, the 1960s civil rights leader and part of the Nation of Islam. And though he was African American, because I wasn't super aware of a lot of African Canadians and prominent Black Canadians when I was growing up, I think that Malcolm X always served as just a very unapologetic, honest person who's very about truth and direct action and supporting the Black community in any way, whether that's supporting Black businesses or trying to create greater representation in education and in the workforce. But I think that he's always served as an inspiration for me in terms of how honest he was and how deeply he went into actually analyzing our identities and the forces that face us. But he also just serves as kind of an inspiration for me on a daily basis in terms of how he was with his work. He was very direct and was not trying to please other people and wasn't trying to accommodate other people within his work, because he was so unapologetically Black and pro-Black that he was going to fight for his people in any way. And I've always wanted to do that. And I think that reminding myself of what kind of an inspiration he is for me definitely, it's definitely just, it shows me how far I've come in terms of what I used to think about his views earlier on, because some of the things I was like, that's completely radical, like that's crazy. But getting to the point where I am now and being 21, I'm just kind of like, okay, I get it now. I know where that's coming from, and I know the wisdom and knowledge that he has is definitely very vital and has always inspired me. But I think that Black figures in Canada are equally as important as people like Malcolm X, because we have amazing people who you should be learning about, like Viola Desmond, who was amazing for civil rights in Canada and who a lot of people will consider the Canadian Rosa Parks. But we know that in her own right, she's equally as amazing and equally as influential. And there's also later people like Lincoln Alexander, who was the first Black MP and first BIPOC person to be lieutenant governor. And I think people like them, people like Marianne Shadd, even people like Willie O'Ree, who was the first Black person in the NHL, who was a Canadian. I think that it's definitely important to actually think about how these people influence who we are today and the contributions we've had to society, because I think a lot of the time we do get caught up in focusing on African American heroes like Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King Jr. or Harriet Tubman, and we often forget about the people who are in our own community, because there are prominent Black communities in Canada and there's prominent Black people, and we have a lot of histories here, and we even have a lot of amazing people in today's society. Like I know that living in Hamilton, going to my master, I've met a lot of amazing change makers and people who've essentially changed history who are still living, like Evelyn Myrie and Dr. Gary Warner, and even Matthew Green, who's currently the first Black city councilor, I believe, for Hamilton. And he was recently appointed elected within the past couple of years. And I think that it's definitely important for people to actually learn about people like that, whether it's developing new courses to actually focus on that, or even just creating new sections and courses like I know that you guys have a Canadian history class where you focus a lot on the world wars, but I know that there's always room to talk about people like the contributions of Black soldiers to World War II. And I think that figures like that definitely remind us that we've been here for a long time and that we're going to continue to be here and that we've made significant contributions to society and that they need to be recognized equally as much as other contributions and that Black history is Canadian history and that needs to be reinforced by actually focusing on key change makers that we have.
Most definitely. Black history is 100% Canadian history. And I really like how you underlined some of our local change makers and our local, because so often people only or solely cite the big names and the mainstream change makers. But it's really important to give credit where credit is due to our local Hamiltonian change makers or really anywhere. And Canadian history is, constantly evolving, and we really need to give credit where credit is due.
Now, the next question we have for you is, could you maybe talk a little bit about the clothing brand you created a few years back and maybe what your initial goals for it were?
Yeah, for sure. So the clothing brand that I developed while I was in university is named Isaiah the Third, and it originally started as kind of just a platform that would force me to be artistic and be creative while I was in university because I realized that with the pressure of doing school all the time and also doing community work, I think that I left a limited amount of time for me to actually focus on self-care and look after my mental health and do things that actually allowed me to just rest and calm down because when you're in school and you're just always trying to do work and try and be as productive as possible, which is a word that I don't love a lot of the time because it suggests that we always need to be working or that if you're not working, that you're not of value to society. But I think that, yeah, it definitely was something that I specifically did because I knew that if I actually had a platform that I wanted to keep growing and focusing on, it would actually force me to do art and to create different things. And anytime I'm doing art is when I'm actually my most mentally healthy and actually focusing on self-care. And I think that that's something that we as students take for granted a lot of time because there are a lot of pressures to being students, especially high school students right now. I think that there's a lot of work put on your shoulders and sometimes your teachers know that, sometimes they don't, but it's definitely important to take your own mental health into your hands and focus on self-care. So that's why I started doing that, but it kind of grew from there. And I realized that I could fuse it with my community work and I could actually use it to do Black focused art pieces and Black focused clothing because I think that there's definitely many amazing Black owned brands and different clothing and apparel companies in Canada, but I wasn't aware of a lot of these at the time. So I think that not seeing a lot of them and actually not feeling represented by a lot of the clothes that I was buying or brands that I had, and I realized that there wasn't a lot where I could buy clothes that were focused on Black history, which was definitely something that I wanted to flex and I wanted to have kind of clothes that I could wear to community events and be proud of. And I think that I definitely wanted to do that for myself to create clothes that I could wear, but I also wanted to do it for other people because I heard people who liked my designs and said that they would also buy t-shirts like that or buy stuff like this because it felt like it actually represented them and that they could actually wear it with pride and knew that the money was going to a good place because a lot of the time when you're buying from people like Zara or H&M, you don't know where your money's going, but when they're buying from me, they know that they're giving it to somebody who's almost as broke as them in university and just trying to fund their way through school. And yeah, that's pretty much what it's come to mean to me. I think that it was very personal for me at first, but it's grown to be something that I think greater represents my community and my people. And I'm very happy that I can actually use something that's focused on me taking care of my mental health to also actually tackle issues that we face on a daily basis.
Our fifth and final question for you today, Aaron, is what is one virtue or concept that you hope people can take away from Black History Month 2021?
Yeah, I think that with a lot that's gone on in the past year, it's been a very difficult year for Black people in Canada and the States, and I'm sure across the world. But I think that the greatest thing that I can think of during Black History Month this year is that we've been here and we're still here and we're going to be here because I think that it's definitely important to focus on the issues that we're facing in today's society. And I think that that's very important, but it's also important to actually focus on the history that we have here, and whether that's keeping people in the state accountable to the different tragedies and issues that Black people have faced in the past, it's also equally as important to actually focus on the contributions and the amazing things that Black people have done, and find the fact that we are a part of what Canada is today, and that we need to be a part of what it's going to be in the future. And I think that in the future, if anything, it should be made more of a society where it's actually comfortable and inclusive for Black and Indigenous and people of color. And I think that it's definitely important to remind ourselves that we're still here and we're going to be here. And we aren't recent here. We're not new. We've been here for generations and for centuries. And that means that we definitely are key stakeholders in what society is today. And we should be stakeholders in what it is for the future, because we've faced enough oppression and years of kind of just denying our identities and our pride and who we are as people, that we definitely deserve a seat at the table, as do Indigenous people and other people of color, in terms of developing society from here. And I think that Black History Month is, a lot of the time, it's kind of, people might just focus on history, but a lot of people now are even moving into a movement where they'll call it Black Futures Month, where we're focusing on different ways that we can move into the future and develop new ways of thinking in society that greater reflect who we are and are more inclusive of who we are. So yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing that reminds me, is that we've been here, we're still here, and we're going to be here.
I really like that answer. You know, the passion and the tenacity that you speak with show that you will be a change maker. You're not saying that you aren't already, but you will continue to be a change maker and will continue to drive change throughout your future. Thank you so much for being on our Thundercast episode 2 today. Aaron, it's been a pleasure having you. Take care, and thank you so much.
Thank you guys. It's been great.
Okay, and it was wonderful talking to Aaron today and learning all of the nice important things and how significant Black History Month can be to everybody. Now we want to talk about another topic, and it's Valentine's Day. And obviously with COVID and the pandemic, it's become a little harder for people to get together and hang out and enjoy each other's company. So Luca today is going to talk to you about some COVID-free Valentine's Day date ideas that you can do with your Valentine. But before we get to that, I'm going to be sharing some movies that you can watch on Valentine's Day, or really any day of the year. Now, we have a classic where I know everybody has seen or is going to see, The Notebook. Very classic movie that you can watch over Valentine's Day. Personally, I like more of the comedic movies, so I would highly recommend 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. So I know there's probably a lot of people that have seen that one as well. And I think another funny one to watch would be The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock. I know that's a really funny one that you can watch. It's also a little more on the romantic side if you really want to get into that Valentine's Day sort of mindset.
And now we'll move on to some date ideas that you can try out with your Valentine this year. We want to keep in mind that we're still in a state of lockdown and we're trying our best to stop the spread of COVID-19. So here's some suggestions for something that you can do with your loved one. The first is maybe FaceTime with your Valentine and make a new recipe. And you can try it out together and see how both of you did. The second is to drop off flowers and chocolates and have maybe a porch visit. The third is, well, we have so much snow and it continues to snow. So maybe you can go tobogganing with your Valentine. That could always be romantic. And finally, go on a winter picnic, because why not? It could be a bit cold, but that's all right. You love each other. It'll be all good. That's all for me, folks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode. And we hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation with Aaron today and all of our fun Valentine's ideas that you can try out. This has been episode 2 of Your Thundercast, hosted by Hanna Jones
and Luca DiPietro.